a few head-ups for you from myself. The Lord loves our fellowship with him, our times of communion with him. You know, even if we ourselves are saying, well, what's the point? Or feeling like we don't want to do any worship, the Lord loves that communion. Singing to the Lord is good for us. We get closer to God. We get more thankful, and it strengthens us. The joy of the Lord is our strength. It says in Psalm 22, verse 3, the Lord inhabits our praises. He's in the room. God is in the house. Woohoo! I believe it shifts things spiritually, and it confounds the enemy's plans. I think that Jehoshaphat passage alone says that as the worshippers went ahead of the army, when they got to the crest of the hill, lo, the enemy were fighting themselves. They just stood and watched. I think they had to be quite brave, stepping out in that believing that they'd heard a word from the Lord and that they were to just go ahead like that and worship the Lord. But that shifted things spiritually. Worship on the streets, the ministry that Imelda does up here, that got started by a wonderful chap called Aaron Shah. That, you know, some people don't understand why you're bothering to worship on the streets. It does have its missional way of bringing people into conversations, but actually, I think it's shifting something spiritually when you're hearing worship flowing down the high street. It's wonderful. I think there is a missional strategy, especially in the north. I feel as if there is a hard wiring towards music. You know, there are little music groups all over the place. And we've got Kathy later on, not too much later on, Kathy. It's going to be sharing about music making in Scott's Gap. You know, I went along for a cup of coffee, and the person I went to see said, his wife said, oh, he's over in the chapel. They don't bite, you know, just go over and I'm sure they'd love to have you in there. And hours later, I came out from a music making session. Everybody got a triangle or a drum or something. You know, it was great, making music together. I think there's a missional strategy in tapping into the fact that people are hardwired towards music. Over the fence at the back of us in our village, I heard one sunshiny day. There weren't many of them, but you know, we did hear. Was it Johnny Cash? No, it was Jim Reeves coming over the fence. You know, and there's an older layer in our village. I don't know if they tap into Jim Reeves, Johnny Cash, Dolly Parton, Elvis Presley. I'm talking about gospel songs here. You know, they don't mind. They love it. I come to the garden alone and all this. It's great. They are actually, so I think there's some missional stuff there. I did inquire about Johnny Cash cover group, but they were rather expensive. And I'm still trying to find somebody with a deep enough voice in the area that I might. Somebody did suggest somebody. So we might get there with that plan. Missional strategy. It awakens people to the Christian musical heritage in the culture. You know, people love Amazing Grace, and Mel has the wisdom to play Amazing Grace at the start of her worship on the streets, and it catches people's attention straight away. It's in there. The Christian culture is embedded in them, and they love it. There needs to be an awakening prayer there for the Christian musical heritage. And we have a lot of call beyond the north. Mary and I sometimes go up to the Nordic, and we were in Estonia as well. You know, the communist regimes along that Baltic coast side of Estonia and Lithuania, Latvia, I don't know if I got the order right there. But Estonia had what was called the singing revolution. And they basically, the communists couldn't stamp out the singing culture of Estonia. And they were a real singy bunch. You know, they loved singing. And every year they'd have their singing festival. And that was the point of collapse of the Soviet government. They couldn't hang on to a country that had a singing culture, singing out their words in song like that. And it was a bloodless coup. nobody died in Estonia when the communism collapsed in Estonia. I think there was in total in one of those other two, Lithuania and Latvia, there's half a dozen or so that died. But in other words, the songs got through, and I believe that it's hard to crush a culture when its songs are embedded in it. Yes. And we've seen that even in our own churches, where the hymns. We might have our thoughts about what we think about some of the preachers that go on, but they're still singing some of the hymns that have got really good, solid stuff in them. And in the culture, there is a good, solid stuff still going on in there that we can tap into. And it pushes back against a modern rewriting of culture that we're aware of. And so I think those are some thoughts there from me. Praise the Lord.